I'm Dr. Dan Zhang, Associate Dean for Faculty Affairs in the School of Education and Human Development. I'm here on behalf of our Dean, Dr. Michael DiMiranda, who unfortunately could not attend because of a prior engagement out of state. The Dean and I want to thank you for coming, whether you're here at the Writer Forum or watching live stream. We are here today. The lecture will address how major research universities can help improve the performance of K-12 education in large metropolitan cities. Joining us today is Dr. Chance Lewis, who will share his perspectives and expertise on the subject. He is the Dean's Excellence Scholar of Urban Education in residence for our schools this semester. And he is a former Houston Endowed Chair and Associate Professor of Urban Education at Texas A&M. He currently serves as the Belk Distinguished Professor at the University of North Carolina, Charlotte. Dr. Lewis' research focuses on urban education, having authored or contributed to over 100 publications and 30 books related to the subject. He's also the Executive Director of UNC Charlotte's Urban Education Collaborative, which publishes research on improving urban schools. So before we begin, I'd like you to take out your cell phone and place your cell phone on silence so that we can all enjoy the lecture. Now, let's all welcome Dr. Chance Lewis.
Appreciate you. Appreciate you. Well, good afternoon. I'm at Texas A&M. So happy to be here. So I guess I would say howdy. Howdy. I'm so happy to be here with you. This is a monumental occasion for me to be back at one of the places that played a significant part of my career for several years, and where I feel I really learned a lot for many of the things that I'm doing now. So I wanted to thank Dean DiMiranda for the opportunity to be here today and to serve in this Dean's Distinguished Scholar in Residence for today. Also, I have a lot of people who are friends and colleagues, and I believe his family as well. I want to thank Dr. John Williams for also having me, my good friend Andrea Caldwell, and many others who are here that have played a significant part of what we have today. I know I have some faculty colleagues and students that are watching live from Charlotte today. So they told me they were going to be watching to make sure you all were taking good care of me while I was here. So I'll let them know all is well. So we're good. But today I want to talk on a topic that I do think is very, very important, especially as we are at one of the most prestigious universities in the country, on a topic that I think is very, very important for us to consider as well. One good thing about today's topic is that we're going to set it up where each and every one of us can find ourselves inside of this topic, because whether we have interacted with urban schools or not, some of the things that I'm going to mention today will have direct implication on our viewpoints on education, also how we look towards the future of education, but then also what I'm going to do as well for all of our major universities that are out there that may be watching or may watch a recording later, also challenge them around particular opportunities that are available today. So some things I'm going to say today, you might not even catch it all today, but you may be thinking about it later and say, I remember he said something about that. And then we need to have some discussions and maybe some decisions on that as well. So I wanted to thank Dr. Zhang for the wonderful introduction as well. So here's a little bit of my journey. I'm from the great state of Louisiana, so I'm close to home as well. You know, I talked to my mother and she knew I was here. I'm from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. So she said, surely you're gonna drive home, while you're here and come see, and then before you go back. But I am from the great state of Louisiana. My trajectory is from a school in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But those of you who have any experience in education, we have some things that we do in education that we don't do in anything else. So I graduated from the school where when you say the name of the school, if you tell people the name of the school outside of that particular campus, people would do things like this. Ooh, I'm sorry about that. And I'll say, yes, that's the school I graduated from. And so then I went on to become a high school teacher at a similar school in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I said, I'm teaching at this school. Somebody said, ooh, you're teaching there? Interesting, okay? And these are the kind of things that we do in education all the time. But then my journey then with opportunities took me from Baton Rouge, Louisiana to the state of Colorado, where I pursued my doctoral degree, and I was fortunate enough to have great experience. It was definitely a culture shock for me moving from Baton Rouge, Louisiana to Colorado, but we made it work, and I was fortunate enough after the completion of my doctoral program to get hired on as a faculty member at Colorado State University. Then the great Texas A&M came calling, and it's been a great deal of my time here. And they're very much shaped, who I am today. And then for the past 12 years, I've been in Charlotte at the University of North Carolina at Charlotte with some great colleagues and some great doctoral students as well. So when we think about journeys, and part of this is going to be around the journey to help understand the topic, okay? So the topic that I'm going to be discussing today is not something that I'm just doing professionally and research. This is part of my life story as well. So I am a product of what we're going to be talking about on today. So, but as we get into today's topic, what I want us to understand for our time period today, because I'm an interactive person and like to get people to think a little bit. So what I'm going to do today to help us get to where I need us to be for today, because I want us to be at a level 10 by the time I'm done. And right now we're about at a 2, but we're going to build up together, okay? So the first thing I want us to do, we're going to develop what I call our educational eyesight, okay? So can somebody repeat after me? Educational eyesight. Educational eyesight, okay? So in our educational eyesight, I'm going to tell you what I mean by that, okay? We're going to have to see what everybody else sees and see what they don't see at the same time. Okay, I'm gonna say that one more time. Okay, we're gonna have to be able to see what everybody else sees and see what they don't see at the same time. So if there are any aspiring educators in the room with us today, this is something that you're gonna have to do quite a bit. And how it happens in education, we're gonna have to see students for where they are now, but also see them for their future potential as well at the same time, okay? So for all of us, this is how we gotta think about this. So to help us with our educational eyesight, I'm gonna put some pictures on the screen. And it's not a trick question or quiz. I want you to view the picture, and I want you to ask yourself the question, what is it that everybody sees? And what is it that they don't see at the same time, okay? Now, I'm not gonna put anybody on the spot. I'm gonna just show you the pictures, okay? And I want you to get some thought into your mind as well. And before I show the pictures, are there any aspiring educators in the room or anybody that want to work with kids? Okay, great, okay? All right, and so before I show this as well, I want us to think about this notion, okay? Somebody had to see us at the present, but also see us at the future as well, okay? All right, so let's go with the pictures. So first picture, what do you see? If you're watching online, you can take some notes or whatever feature they have for you as well to interact online, or if you're here, you could take a couple of things as well. But I want you to just Look at the picture with those two questions in mind. What does everybody see, and what is it that they don't see at the same time? Okay? And I'm gonna quickly go through the pictures. Next picture. What do you see? And what do most people don't see at the same time? Okay? Because these pictures are gonna help us and guide us for where we wanna go. What do we see? And what do we don't see as well? Okay? Now, in my time in doing this, I've been doing this long enough where I could feel your mind starting to move a little bit in the room. I could feel the energy, because as we start to think about this, these are some things as well. And the cool part that I love about education is that as an educator, you don't know who you're going to work with over your career. And they are still trusting their lives with you. Okay? What do we see? What do we don't see? Okay? I'm going to just let the pictures roll. Each picture has a story to go along with it for our topic for today. Okay? So, as we start to think about students in these schools and understanding that they matter, I bring us now from the pictures to part of my story. So this is a picture of my high school in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, right? Capital High School, okay? So remember I said, when you told people, I know there's only one other person here that knows about this school, okay? So when you say the name of the school, I said, people say, oh, things like, oh, I'm sorry about that, right? But inside the school, they had educators who believed in the full potential of every student that came inside of that school, even though all the external factors were negative, okay? But the students who went to this school, okay, just like in my situation, may not have had all of the correct check marks of what some educators would look for. So maybe they did not have the right address. For anybody in education, you know what I mean when I say that. Maybe they did not have the right zip code. Anybody in education, they know what I mean when I say that, okay? Maybe they did not have, quote unquote, the most ideal family situation, okay? Maybe their socioeconomic status was not the highest. However, inside of that particular school, you had educators who did believe in them, right? So inside of that, as we start to look at students who went to that particular school, including myself, one thing I did notice that they pushed us to reach our maximum academic potential. That's how I'm before you today. But however, some things that we could notice, okay, is that we did not have the resources as other schools in the same city, in the same district, even a couple of miles away, okay? And so as we start to look at this, by many of the educational metrics, most people on the outside of the school deem the school failing, even though we were reaching maximum potential inside. So now a label was put on that school, okay? And when a label is put on the school, and this is where I come find you for a minute, is that when a label is put on a school, it's also put on a community, it's also put on people that surround it as well, all tied back to what's going on at a school, okay? So What I've come to learn in the course of my career and seeing what I saw in my educational experience at my high school by just a label being put on a particular community, even though students like myself had very caring educators who pushed us to our maximum potential, a lot of outside influences were going on at the same time. So when I look across the country, I found out my high school experience is not isolated, it's national. And in this national look of what is going on, what we find for our future educators is that as we look across the board, just like in the pictures that I showed you, that every parent, no matter where they live, they send their kid to school with the same expectation: excellence. I am turning over the life of my kid to you as an educator for you to make something happen for them. So for our future educators in the room, I want you to think about that for a minute, because no matter who the parent is, where they live, or what the situation is, they're turning their kid over to you for excellence, okay? So as we look at this, we have what I call this good school threshold, okay? For those people who are in the room, raise your hand if you would love for your kid, your grandkid, your cousin, your niece, all of them to go to a good school, okay? All right, so we got hands across the room, okay? Now, if I would pose the question, but I'm not gonna do that to anybody today, if I say, what is a good school? Okay, could anybody describe for us what is a good school? Okay, I'm not gonna put you on the spot, but we have this good school threshold that we all look for, right? I've done it with my kids, we do it. We say, I want to be in a situation where my kids or whomever in my family go to a good school, okay? So we got this good school threshold, okay? But let me tell you about the good school threshold, okay? And the power of labels tied to a particular school is that whatever this threshold is, this notion of good schools, we will pay extra for the good school threshold, okay? So how many people, of course, not anybody in here, we're gonna just talk about other people that we know, right, okay? How many of you know of someone that has moved somewhere just because of a good school? Raise your hand, okay? How many of you know somebody that has paid extra something just to be by a good school? Okay. How many of you know somebody who may have paid extra just to sit in a longer car rider line? Okay. If you've never experienced a car rider line before, go to a good school car rider line. Okay. Because a good school car rider line will make you wait for an hour. Right? School gets out at 3, the car rider line starts at 1. Right? That's the good school threshold that I'm talking about, because it is so good, I am willing to sit out in my car at 1 and take a nap and wait for my kid to come out. That's the good school threshold, right? And so because I am willing to sit there and not let them ride the bus because I feel it's a good school. Right? So when we have this good school threshold, we are willing to do whatever it is as well. But let me tell you the power of the good school threshold. It also impacts other things, okay? Let me give you some other things that it impacts. If there's a perception of a good school threshold, okay, you're gonna have potential jobs that go by the school, right? Okay, you're gonna have impact on real estate. Okay, I'm gonna give you one example. I'm not gonna name names. I'm just examples. These are just what I call educational examples. Okay, I remember when I moved to College Station in 2006, right? You know what I'm talking about. My real estate agent told me, oh, you're gonna be working there? Or the same thing when I moved to Charlotte. Oh, I heard you were in this row. We're gonna take you by the good schools. Okay? The good school threshold, right? And so whatever the labels are tied to the school, then the threshold has far-reaching implications, okay, than just what's going on inside the building, okay? So as we think about that threshold then, ladies and gentlemen, and those who are watching, it has implications. But what if you're a student like Chance Lewis, okay, who understands the labels, right? And what if the label is not satisfactory for your situation? The label is still there. So it could be the power for good or not, okay? But I want you to understand the power the good school threshold has on so many other sectors of life because of that threshold, okay? So as we move forward, in my understanding of this, so if any of you are in education, we found that, okay, all schools are not reaching the good school threshold. So if any of you know anything with education over the past decade or so, this federal legislation came out called No Child Left Behind. Anybody heard of that before? Okay. And that statement was, when it came out in 2001 and authorized in 2002, here was the statement. By 2014, we will have all schools and students reaching proficiency in their academic metrics. How did that work out? Okay. So as we start to look at that, so I'm painting this picture for where we're going here, okay? So that was roughly 2001 to 2014. So you saw some things that might have changed in there because, you know, like I tell my doctoral students, in understanding how the country works, states have educational rights. This is a federal policy. So how is it that the federal got involved with the state? Because the state took the money and say, if you take the money, you have to report. So then all schools had to report of how they were doing. So in this time span of 2001 and 2014, they said, wait a minute, something's going on, okay? So then we say, well, we're gonna come back with something else, okay? Okay, we're gonna move from No Child Left Behind to the, Every Student Succeed Act, okay? And then this way we'll make sure that no student, is in a situation where the school is not achieving, okay? How did that work out, okay? All right, so we move forward. So what I show you here, if we look at across the country from No Child Left Behind and the Every Student Succeed Act, they reported data nationally, okay? But then in the national picture, what we found was many states, many school districts like, well, wait a minute, we can't just be putting this information out there because if you put it out there, it may mess up our good school threshold, okay? So in our good school threshold, if we mess that up, it has far-reaching implications, okay? But then as we zoom in on some of the larger urban districts in the country, okay, to see how they were doing, and just to catch us up and for time purposes of today, this is how did they do pre-COVID 2019 to 2022 after COVID. Were they going up in their achievement or going down? Okay, so in these major educational systems across the country, if the arrow is going down, that means the scores dropped. If you see the little kind of diamond shape, they remain steady, okay? Or if the arrow is going up, they progressed. So look at the national picture. This is grade 4 in mathematics, okay? So now, as we start to scan the horizon around the country in these large metropolitan districts, we see something going on, okay? Or I could just come to a neighborhood near you, or even your school district, and I could find some similar things going on as well. So now as we start to look at this then, ladies and gentlemen, what I want us to see is that now the good school threshold impact moved from being a local thing to a national thing. And now major districts had to deal with this notion of achievement and beg the question of how do we turn it around, because we have to turn it around, because if we don't, millions and millions of dollars are at stake. Property taxes are at stake. Businesses in the area are at stake as well, okay? This is grade 8 in some of the largest area in mathematics, okay? So you kind of see some of the trends as well. So if we look at our great state, since I'm still here today, we're standing here in the great state of Texas, look at the chart. Where I live now in Charlotte, look at the chart. Pick your favorite big city, look at the chart. Okay? So as we start to look at this, then the notion continues. So let's look at reading. Okay? So now in reading, you see some places holding steady, some down, some going up maybe. Okay? But now to kind of capture this in a national kind of landscape, we kind of see what's going on, and this is grade 8 in reading. Okay? So let's think about this from a bigger picture then, ladies and gentlemen. Some people will say, I am willing to move wherever I need to go to get the good school threshold. But as you look across the country, you're going to run out of places to run pretty soon. So now we have to deal with something that's even bigger. So now what we come to understand, the state said, wait a minute, I don't need you doing this to us. The school district saying, you reporting it from a national perspective. Okay, what we're going to do is take matters in our own hands as states and say, we're going to report the progress. Okay, great. Let's see how we do then. So basically all the states in the country have one or two ways they report school accountability. Either they're going to give them a letter grade, A through F, and some of you may have heard that locally in your schools, what's the grade, or they're going to give it a school index score. Now, when this first started, and you just tell me your thoughts on this, remember we have to see what everybody else sees and see what they don't see at the same time, right? So when this started, 45 of the 50 states were using letter grades, A through F, okay? Now, only 11 use letter grades. I wonder why. Okay? Because if you stick an A on the school, people will poke their chest out and say, hey, we're an A school. And they'll do things like this. You know we're an A school, right? Did we tell you we were A school? Did you hear that we were A school in our neighborhood? Okay? Now, nobody says, you know we're F school, right? Did anybody tell you we were F school, right? But go back to my high school. Each letter grade that you put on there is not just the school. It's the community as well, okay? Or here's another thing that happened. The public didn't understand two factors. They didn't understand what went into the letter grade or the score, or did they necessarily even care? It's easy for them to digest, we're A school, okay? But the public did not understand at the school if it went from an A school to a B school. There's an uproar, okay? Or, here's the other thing that they didn't understand. What if the A school was here and the neighboring school was a C, and then they say, well, we're gonna move the attendance zone one street over. Uproar. Just because of that. okay? So the power of the letter grades have far-reaching implications, or the index scores as well. So no matter how they looked at it, whether it was index or letter grade, in every state, there is a minimum of 300 schools that are considered low performing. So if you combine that 300 schools with the average school size, I'm going to say outside of the state of Texas, about 500 people. Inside of the state of Texas, that'll probably be about 1,500 people. Okay? Think about the number of students and families that are impacted by that. Now, when we say letter grade, most people would think that we're talking about just student performance. We're talking about, are the students growing? We're talking about faculty, staff. We're talking about administration, leadership, finances, all the things that go along with it that play a part in this rating as well. So people got so upset with these letter grades and these index scores, they say, wait a minute, we're going to put together some state legislation where if these schools are not performing, we're going to have everything in place where we could immediately take them over, okay, to do what we call school turnaround or school reform, because we're going to fix them. How did that work out? Okay, now I can name some examples, but I'm not going to do that yet. Not yet, right? All right, but as we start to look at that, it sounds good externally to say we're going to take them over, but if we don't have an answer, we have the same thing we had before, okay? So then another 25 states said, if they're not performing like we like it, we could just go and take over a school within 30 days. We're going to give them a 30-day notice. We come and take over. We could get rid of all the people, and if you want to come back, you will have to reapply for your job. Okay? So that's how serious the situation of the good school threshold had become, because from a public-facing perspective, pressure is now mounting to say, how is it in the great state of fill in the blank with any state that you want, how is it that we have a minimum of 300 schools that are not achieving? That is far beyond our understanding. So what we're going to do, we're going to provide some other alternatives. So then we've kind of seen this maturation of this 200% increase in charter schools, okay? And then in the charter schools, to give parents options in education delivery for their particular students, charter schools came on the scene, okay? But in the public eye and receiving public funds, even these schools had to have reporting as well. So now they fall under the letter grade and the school index score. So then what we found is that some of these schools as well was having the same patterns as the traditional public schools that we were looking at before. So let me pose this question to anyone in the audience. Would you consider some different educational options if your child or grandchild or somebody related to you, their school went from a good school threshold to a mediocre school threshold? Would that make you start thinking a little bit? Okay? Would that make you start thinking about maybe there's some change I need to make? Okay? But remember, any change related to education is going to cost, because you got to pay the premium for the good school threshold. Okay? So as we start to think about that, I want to build that into where we're going. But what we found in all of this is that over this time, from that No Child Left Behind to the current day, one noticeable voice was still silent at the table. And those were the major research universities. And the reason why I posed that question, these are the same universities, okay, that are ranked in the top 100 in education. These are the same institutions that recruit the cream of the crop faculty experts from around the world and say we have them at our institutions, right? But what we found in these major urban centers, there's now great opportunity for these institutions to make some significant impact, okay? So, since I am at Texas A&M University today, and I know I have some University of North Carolina at Charlotte people watching, how many of you, just by a show of hands, since we're here in Texas today, believe Texas A&M is a great university? Right? Okay. If I do the same thing for Charlotte, University of North Carolina, Charlotte, people that are watching, raise your hand. Even though I can't see you, I know you're watching though. Okay. But as we look at this, now is the time that I'm going to provoke for us some thought process that I want all of us to consider as well. Okay. So if I go back on the map and show you something really quick to make a point. In understanding how universities work, in every state, there are certain institutions that are designated as what we call flagship universities, okay? And in the flagship universities, these are universities that are designated by the state as leading universities in the state that will lead us into the new frontier of what the possibilities can be, okay? So in North Carolina, there's University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, Duke University as well. Here in Texas, it's Texas A&M, and I've lived here long enough not to say the name of the other school. I got it, okay? I got it, okay? But those are the flagships, okay? But as we move forward then, in the flagships, then where are they in this particular conversation? So here's some 10 action-based solutions that I want us to consider for these major research universities. And as you love this school and other schools that are watching around the country, I want us to consider these and have discussion and talk to those persons that are in those positions to consider something, okay? So the first thing that I want us to consider, if we know we have an issue going on, we have to get to a point of a solution, because in my work, I always try to say, okay, what's the solution here for us to consider as we move forward, okay? So one thing we've clearly established is that there's a issue in every major center, metropolitan center in the country, basically, okay? 300 schools are not reaching the threshold, so what do? The problem is most of the flagship institutions that I named, and you go across the states, many of them are not geographically housed in the major metropolitan cities. So with that, we now have a geographic issue because where they are placed. Second is that if we're going to be a major player, because I'm going to talk about some of the opportunities that are missed as well. But if we're going to do that, we got to consider some things as well. So in the 10 solutions that I'm going to present today, I'm going to talk about it from 2 angles. The win-win for public schools and persons on the ground, and for the major research university, okay? So let's go with number 1. So in this strategy 1, for the major research institutions, and I'm gonna start with the school districts and the public as well. The university will have to provide a champion who is willing to move from the college town to the major metro. because we know something is going on. And in these major metropolitan cities, like in Charlotte, where I live, and I'm very pleased to have a center that I'll talk about in a minute, is housed in the heart of the city, but you're gonna have to have a champion to coordinate effort and have credibility with stakeholders. So if we're gonna make significant difference in these places, you have to have persons that could talk with school district officials, policymakers, lawmakers, all of these kind of persons that have credibility, that can talk the language that they need to talk for the change to happen, okay? From the university side, okay, you gotta think about wherever you are in the country, you gotta think about who would that champion be amongst us, okay? Who could look at it from a standpoint of leaving the safety net, right, of the college town to engage in a major metropolitan place. Now, we have other initiatives that are going on, but I'm talking specifically about what we're talking about with school turnaround to support these particular schools as well, okay? So let's think about that. Strategy 2, we have to create a transform or a center institute focused on school turnaround, because what is happening right now, and insert the name of the major metropolitan city, okay, is they are searching to no end for answers and they don't know where to go. And on the ground for school districts and schools, they are spending millions and millions of dollars every year to find a fix with any person that they think could do it, okay? And then they find out that that person cannot, and then they just spent this money and nothing has changed, okay? So let me tell you what I mean by that, okay? How many of you know someone who has sat through an educational meeting and said, that's a waste of my time? But then you go to some, you're like, man, that was great. This is exactly what we need. But to get to that solution, you got to go through a lot of other solutions that cost you a lot of money, okay? And time and money have been spent, but where do the school districts, the schools, look for answers that are credible by people who understand what works, evidence-based? That's many of the people at the major research universities, because these are the people that guide the research, these are the people that guide these situations. So what if we had, from the major university standpoint, a focused center, and insert the name of the city, insert the name of the state, right, that is focused specifically on supporting the 300 schools or more, because in some states, I looked the other day, I have one state, I'm not gonna call it out, about 800 schools that are low performing. Where's the focus place where they can go to get the answers that they need, okay? Who will support new teachers that are coming in there? Because remember, the parent is doing their part. They said, my part is to get the kid to the building. And once I get them to the building, something should happen. But when they get to the building, something did not happen, okay? So what we're talking about then, where are the answers lying at that particular point? What if we take in the middle of the city, insert the name of the major research institution, that they had a presence inside of that city to say, this is where you could come for training, you can come for research, you can come for whatever you need, this is the place. And you have a brand name to go with it, okay? Now, from the university side, let's think about this. The budgets for major urban school districts are not in the millions of dollars. They are in the billions of dollars, okay? So what if the second largest expenditure for every school district in the country outside of salaries and payroll is professional development and training. So we're talking millions of dollars in each school district. So if we look at it from the major research institutions side, if you have the expertise with the faculty, you have the expertise of the brand, you have the expertise where you could provide the infrastructure to provide the answers for these school districts. Just think of, insert the name of the university, how much money is left on the table just because you're not there, providing the answers to the most pressing things where they are looking for the answers right now. Okay? Because how many parents, if there are any parents in the room, you could just raise your hand if you feel I'm about to tell the truth with this statement. Would it make you feel good knowing that if the school needed answers or the teachers needed the training that they needed to support your child to be the best that they could be, would you feel confident knowing that if they had that to make them better, you would be glad about that? Raise your hand. Because my child's future is at stake. Okay? But with this provider having this center of focus on school turnaround, all the answers that they need come right there. Okay? So this is something we got to think about. So then in this presence, we had this outreach initiative where we reach out to these particular schools and school district, because now with the brand name of insert the name of the institution, that you know now we're here. We can provide you what you need, and we will make sure we are there with you every step of the way. We will garner our infrastructure to get you also external grants like we do to support and bring additional resources in the school that are not even currently there. Because we're going to walk right there with you, because we're going to do this with outreach just to let you know that we're here. Okay? But then we go into partnership mode, because now we're here in the city, and now one cool thing that happens about it in education, most places have a soft heart for education, because if they see somebody else doing something for education, some other people say, well, I see what you're doing, I'm going to jump on board too. So now you can have partnerships, just like what I do with Charlotte. In Charlotte, once we start doing some things, now NFL teams say, we want to be a part of that. NBA teams say, we want to be a part of that. Because if it supports the local schools, let's do it. But you have to be present to make it happen as well, okay? And then strategy 5. What will happen in this vision of what we're talking about here, you gotta think about this. When the momentum starts to move, more support structure, infrastructure will need to be handled to handle the new demand. Because here at this university and at the university I currently work at in Charlotte, what we have to look at is that we have great infrastructure to get in resources such as grants and contracts and money flows on the campus. But now, you're in this major metropolitan area, now you have to set up infrastructure, because now you have the potential for millions and billions of dollars to flow, but you got to have infrastructure there to be ready to make it happen. So you're going to have to be able to set up grants and contract offices, because now, because of the need, people are going to be knocking at the door. And are we ready to handle once the vision starts moving, where people hear that you're here and you can help and you can change our situation from this threshold to the good school threshold? We'll pay, no problem. Because remember I said in the beginning, people will pay premiums for the good school threshold. And I want us to think about that. So then locations matter, okay? So one thing we are learning is that nationally, enrollments in schools and colleges of education are declining. This is what we see nationally, particularly for undergraduate education. teacher training programs. But now there's untapped human potential inside of these cities that will love to have the programming of insert the name of the major research university. The only reason that they are not involved in it because whatever the situation is, they can't make it to insert the name of the college town, which is usually about an hour away from the major metro. Okay? So then, what if we told these local school districts, even in Charlotte where I am, or any major metropolitan place in the country, what we will do, we will bring this program to you in the place where you are. We had a brand name, and we know you have access to people that we can do that with. Okay? So we start to think about that, but you look at the programming locations where you can offer this. And I know this is true because I've studied this. I went across the country and had conversations with these school districts. They said, we just want you here. You can even share our building with us. Just come. Okay, and you think about that. So, looking at this, think about what are we offering curricular-wise, okay? So, I'm not gonna put anybody on the spot here, but how many people have learned anything in their class that focuses on school turnaround? Has the topic been brought up? Or how have we shaped future teachers to understand this is how you teach in a situation that can help turn around a classroom that may not have reached their full potential? Now think about that. So our curriculum offerings, we also have to examine because you know where the jobs and education are gonna be? In these places where we're talking about. Okay, so curricular offerings. And before I get ready to close, I'll give you these last three. Partnerships with local community colleges. In every major metro, okay, because I've had these conversations, since enrollment is declining at the four-year traditional university, now community colleges have introduced these introductory education classes, the first course or the second course, and their enrollments, which is even more diverse than the four-year, are growing exponentially of people who are interested in becoming educators. So they're in the city and they have the population who have an interest in becoming an educator. But once they leave with their associate degree, then where can they go? Because the insert the name of the major institution is not there. So, and many of these students may or may not be traditional college age students, the 18 to 21-year-old, right? But there's a great demand for some offerings there, okay? So there's opportunity for partnerships with local community colleges for the next generation of the teaching force that is right there, ready for us as well, okay? Then strategy 9, partnerships with the local school districts. Because I'm talking now, and this is what every major research university understands, enrollment and enrollment dollars. In every school district, in every school, there are a group of what they call paraprofessionals that are in the building that would love to be involved in education. All they need is the program available to them, but they can't go to insert the name of the college town because it's over an hour away. So just think, so since we're here in College Station, Texas, the nearest major metro is Houston. Just think about in the Houston area, how many paraprofessionals are in the school district that are not being serviced that would love to go into education, enrollment and enrollment dollars, okay? But then finally, as I close, utilize the brand to enhance educational solutions, because the university can do things that many other stakeholders out there can't do. They can provide educational opportunities. They could provide conferences. They could provide learning experiences. They could provide study abroad experience. They could provide things that will make people want to be involved with this, because there's a group of people, educators, policymakers, that will love to see this notion of school turnaround happen and be the shining example of that for the country. And if any of you have been watching the national headlines, there are things going on all around the country, some things that make you scratch your head, like, what are they even doing to make some things happen around school turnaround? But the what if is, what if the major research universities stepped in and say, okay, we will be the torch bearer that carries this to that and then serve as the shining example. That is a challenge for every major research university that I put out there around this particular topic, because what I showed you on the maps will only continue to grow, and it's coming to a neighborhood near you. So enjoy your A school now, because sooner or later, you're going to run out of neighborhoods to move to, unless you step in. So how do I bring all of this to a point of how we can close this? For all of these students that we have across the country, even like students like myself, we're going to send them down one of three pathways. We're going to send them on a pathway to college. We're going to send them on a pathway to be workforce ready, or we're going to send them on a pathway to prison or their own funeral. The cool part is our tax dollars pay for all three. How do we want our money used? Because in a country such as the United States, with all the plentiful resources that we have, there is no reason why this phenomenon should continue to grow as well. We're looking for educators. We're looking for people in policy. We're looking for people in the legal and law and all of these particular things that could make monumental change, because in the work that I've done in my career, I have seen once there is a torchbearer that is willing to champion this, everybody else starts to fall in place. Okay? So as we start to think about this, my challenge for today's lecture is not only a clarion call for future educators, our educators that are here that are being trained to be teachers, to raise the level of education for students and their families, but then also at a bigger picture to think about what's going on and the impact of what letter grades do to a community. Because and he knows this, my high school, once that label was put on there, that is a label that they are still fighting to this particular day. Because that's just how strong the labels are. And to break the label, it has to be something that is much bigger as well. So, as a result of us knowing this information today, what is our action steps going forward? All I ask for any of us is to find where we can make the change, whether it's locally at our school, or if we're at the person that's a decision maker at the university level. I want us to see the alarm of what's going on across the country. And those that are in place right now who are trying to figure it out, they are struggling. Case example, Houston. If you followed the headlines, that is the example of what struggle looks like trying to figure this out. Okay? We're going to transform the library into a school detention center. That'll change it. Clearly. That's the struggle. But that is what is going on across the country. Unless a stakeholder with major credibility steps in, like insert the name of the major university, say, this is what we can do. So I want to thank you for hanging out with me today. I appreciate your time. I want to thank you for being so kind to give up time in your schedule to be with me today. But I want you to think about as you leave here after this particular occasion, look in your local communities and talk and have the conversations with how are we going to either move our schools to the good school threshold, how we're going to maintain the threshold, and then how is it that the good threshold is the norm for everybody? That is the question as well. Thank you so much. I appreciate you hanging out with me today. Thank you so much.
Let's give Dr. Chance Lewis another round of applause for a very inspiring speech. I particularly like how he depicted the problem we face, the challenges we face, and also provided with strategies. And it really inspires us to do more with the urban schools or metropolitan schools and in bigger areas like Houston or other places. Really thank you for the information that you shared with us today. Well, our school also places a great value on faculty development and staff development. As a part of faculty development, our office organizes a series of guest speaker series that featuring nationally, internationally renowned scholars and on several topics that are interesting to our school. So next Thursday, November 16th, from 1 to 3, Dr. Robert Jaggers will speak to us via Zoom on the topic of social emotional learning research. So everybody is encouraged and invited to attend. You can attend in the comfort of your desk, Zoom, whatever place you like to be, and join us by Zoom next Thursday from 1 to 3. And with that, we want to thank you again for joining us, whether here at the other forum or via live stream. I think we have a reception after a while, and we would encourage you to stay behind and talk to our great speaker, Dr. Chance Lewis, and also visit with each other. Thank you so much for being here.